Hey, good morning. 8:38. The Lake Pacific Points, Cabo Enterprises, ITD, and Jack in the Box on this Monday, October 25th. Good morning. Let's head into the Zoom room where we have standing by attorney Vanessa Williams. She wears a lot of hats. I'm surprised she doesn't have 5 heads or so many hats. Hi, Vanessa. Unmute.
Good morning. It's the 5-headed master.
The Hydra, if you will. One of the hats that you definitely wear, chair of the Cannabis Control Board. And I mean, a lot of people have been asking. I know we've been shooting messages, but what is the status of the rules and regulations for the implementation of this law?
So the status is that there are the board, via the different agencies that sit on the board, are revising the rules that we proposed based on comments and feedback from the Attorney General's office. Well, it's their advice. You know, the Attorney General gives their advice on the constitutionality, whether it's organic, any other problems they see that might be inconsistent with other areas of law. And they give us advice on how the proposed rules were drafted. We're making revisions to those rules based on that advice. Once those revisions are done, and as soon as we're able to notice a meeting, the board will discuss whether they're going to approve those revisions or make further revisions. And then it would go back to the AG's office, where we hope it would be approved based on our revisions.
Can you talk about what specifically the AG had issues with or wanted to look at again?
Yeah, there's I'd say a couple. The two main categories are, one, what authority the board has to seize illegal product. So it's not criminal anymore. It's just illegal to grow or sell cannabis without a license, for commercial purposes. And the board had tried to adopt a seizure practice that was similar to what the agency Rev and Tax does with alcohol. And the AG's office said, we can't do that. So we have to rework what the enforcement mechanisms are, the penalties, because the law doesn't provide for the Cannabis Board to do any civil forfeiture of illegal product. And it's not a crime anymore. So there's no remedy in that way. The other broad category is how the rules were written, and there was a lot of advice to make the rules more specific and clearer for businesses to understand. So, for example, where there's reference to other laws or other requirements, because it's not just Cannabis Control Board that oversees these businesses. You still have maybe EPA getting involved, fire department, land management. And so instead of just referring to land management, the suggestions were more to incorporate what the law says in those specific cases or the rules say in those specific cases, and put into our rules to make it easier to follow and unambiguous. So those would be the two main categories, the biggest things. And in that, it requires a lot of little revisions.
How long has it been with the AG?
Well, the AG, I want to say they had it, I don't remember exactly. I want to say a couple months, a few months. They did return it back to us already. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're working on, the revisions based on their advice. Over, I want to say, last month, mm-hmm. August to September, we had a couple sessions with the AG's office in which they relayed their advice. And so now it's been back with the agency. So you have, various agencies. You have public health working on it. You have Rev and Tax working on it. You have Department of Agriculture, and they're all working on these revisions based on their advice and looking to other areas of law that they need to incorporate.
How long do you think it's going to take?
Well, right now, I don't know how soon we can notice a meeting, because we have we're waiting for a purchase order to issue so that we can actually get the publication for our next meeting so that we can meet the publication requirements. And so as soon as I can, as soon as we're able to, that purchase order issues, I believe that comes from GSA, I think because it's a new fiscal year, I'm not sure. But as soon as that issues, we're going to set a meeting. And so that would probably be within like 15 days of when we get the notice. So it gives them time to do the publication. And we're moving forward, calling the meeting, and we'll hope that all the revisions are finished by then, because that's when we're meeting next.
Can you kind of go over the, are you aware of the timeline once it gets transmitted to the legislature?
No, I can't. So it's kind of, I can give you the steps. I don't know the timeline because there is no specific timeline for the Attorney General's office to act. Once they get the revisions, they're going to compare it to the old version, make sure it meets their scrutiny, and then once they approve it, then it'll get submitted to the legislature.
Right.
And I can't, I don't know how long that's going to take. I doubt that they would even know at this point, because they'd want to see the revisions first before they estimate.
Right. So what I from my understanding was that they can adopt it as is, or hold a public hearing and then make changes in a bill form. Is that accurate?
I believe so, when it comes to the legislature.
Right.
So the AG's office, they're not going to rewrite our rules for us. They're just going to tell us whether they're sufficient or not. And if they are, then they'll prove it. And then we've got the AG's approval, and we've got the governor's office approval, so that we can transmit it to the legislature.
So probably next year, realistically, early part.
I'd say so. Yeah.
Was the AG's proposed changes? I know that you had answered Sabrina's question, but were there a lot of like technical things that he kind of rearranged?
Yeah, I'd say they're technical as in, substantive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, because the search and seizure provision is very substantive. That was a whole chapter or article of the rules. So that's going to change, and whether there's going to be something put in like to meaningfully replace that, like higher fines, what other penalties we can do, that would be substantive, that would be technical. I don't know at this point, the board hasn't decided what to do about that. Well, I'd say that would be the main technical thing.
Would the public have the opportunity to look at these changes?
Well, yeah, they would have the opportunity, because they'd be at our once we notice the board meeting, the public.
Oh, yeah.
That's the opportunity for the public to know, and then and the media, and then they come to the board meeting, right. And we always have an opportunity for the public to see. But in terms of like the initial process, where we had a hearing and we scheduled multiple hearings and had a period for comment and feedback, that we don't go through that process again. Otherwise, I think we'd be stuck in this process forever. And you're never going to please everyone. So, public's always welcome to come to the meetings and comments, but that public hearing process has ended. So we've been advised, the AG's office, make your proposed changes. The board has to approve and send it back to their office.
Did you anticipate the whole thing taking this long?
Well, definitely not. I mean, definitely not. I definitely didn't expect this. I did think it was going to be very difficult, because you are creating a regulatory system from nothing. And there's so much about cannabis that, people don't understand, or, the government doesn't understand. In terms of COVID, where that stopped everybody and redirected what public health was doing, what rev and tax was doing, didn't expect that. But aside from that, what I think what is kind of the most surprising is just the amounts of the time from the public hearings to now. I think because we've got so much feedback and it's, in polar opposite directions. There are people who just they still don't want cannabis to be legal. So nothing's going to, suffice. And we've got a lot of comment like that. And then, yeah, so I think that's the most surprising part, is a lot of resistance and to the rules, as opposed to being, what I think we anticipated is put out something that is the minimum, that is the minimum to protect the public and to ensure compliance, make sure the public is safe and that their cannabis is being adequately regulated. And what's surprising is that people, even in support of the cannabis industry, a lot of the feedback was for more regulation.
Wow. For
more scrutiny. And I think that's what's most surprising to me, is that instead of saying, yeah, okay, let's do this, let's go ahead and go with these regs as is, they're like, no, you need to do this, you need to do that. So that's, I think, the most surprising thing aside from the pandemic.
Yeah. Is there any update on the GBME case?
Yeah, so this is the case with Mr. Lubofsky, yes, bringing a petition against the Guam Board of Medical Examiners and the Guam Allied Health Board. And we had a hearing last week. Unfortunately, nothing was heard to move forward in the matter because the government filed a motion to dismiss. And so the judge has allowed us an opportunity to respond to that motion to dismiss and to hear address those arguments before hearing whether the alternative writ, which is like the permanent writ, the final relief, will issue. So we don't have a hearing date yet. I believe the judge said it probably won't be till the end of the year, like sometime in December, just because of the criminal case backlog that the courts are facing. But we will be submitting a response in the next week and a half.
Mm-hmm. You said motion to dismiss. Are you able to explain the reasoning for the motion to dismiss? I know that when you had filed the lawsuit, and I was looking up GBME just to see if they had started posting physicians who had been disciplined, and I didn't find anything, but I did find that they actually launched a website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's actually that's one reason.
Mm-hmm.
There was a few reasons. They're kind of alternative arguments, and one of them is that they've already started the work for the website because and saying, okay, well, we've already started this website, so there's really the lawsuit's moot, the petition's moot, because the judge doesn't need to order us something we're already doing. And that's what they've said with respect to this website, where it has to have detailed physician profiles. The other thing that they've argued is similar with respect to the rules, because what Mr. Lubofsky is suing to enforce is that each of these boards adopts rules and regulations, a unified process. Well, not unified, but a consistent process with respect to each of these boards to investigate complaints from the public. And so their other argument is that they do investigate complaints from the public, but and there is a process, but it's not a process that follows any rules or regulations. So that's kind of the defense or their argument. The other main thing that they're arguing is they're saying that Mr. Lubofsky doesn't really have the right or standing to demand that the boards do these things that we say they're required to do by law.
That he doesn't have standing?
Yeah, so they're saying, well, he doesn't have some specific special interest in really making the boards do what we say is required by law. And kind of the technical size of that argument is just, I mean, I don't know under their argument who would have standing, but I can tell you reason he's brought this lawsuit is that he's had multiple complaints pending before each of these boards. So, if having an actual complaint pending, having them not having a documented process for how these are going to be investigated in these rules, and having them pending for a year doesn't give you the right to kind of make them do their duties. I really don't know what does. But the other, argument is there is law that in a writ case, in a mandamus case, when you're seeking the performance of just some public duty, a duty owed to the public at large, then you don't need to have that special beneficial interest that's owed to you. Because what you're doing is kind of this doctrine of citizen or taxpayer standing. You're just trying to make sure the government does what it's supposed to do by law. And any citizen should be able to do that. So there's really, I believe that Mr. Lubofsky does have standing on this under this like very narrow look that they're trying to adopt. But other than that, I think the public, anybody has a right to enforce the government to do their duty. And so that's kind of the interesting thing. That's the other argument about whether he can bring this lawsuit.
Wow.
And you got to remember, I think the boards, their duties, if you look at both the Allied Health Board and the Medical Board, their primary responsibility, their duty is to protect the public. That's their duty. They're supposed to adopt rules and regs to protect the public. And I think that when you have a claim that there has been some improper or incompetent health care, then you would think that, it's in the public's interest to have a prompt, unbiased investigation for that complaint to protect the rest of the public.
Are you aware where anyone can go here on Guam if they wanted to know if a doctor was ever disciplined? Is there a site other than, I thought it was supposed to be on this GBME site? Do you know?
No, I'm not aware of any other centralized location where you could find all this information. And I would imagine that's why the legislature wanted this to be adopted, so you basically have one place where you can see everything about this healthcare provider. What the law does provide is also says that when anybody requests this information, the same information that should be up on the website, that it should be provided within 4 days. So this is a specific provision in the same law for those physicians' profile, separate and apart from the Sunshine Act. Mm-hmm. So that's basically the only other way you'd be able to get this information at this time. Right. And you'd have to hope you'd get it within 4 days.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So when do you have to file your response brief, or have you already?
We have not. We'll be filing it next week.
Okay. Well,
right
thank you so much.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, very. Way more interesting than the cannabis rules. Thank you, Vanessa.
Okay, thank you.
All right, stay safe.
Be safe. There you go, Attorney Vanessa Williams. It's 8:57. Let's keep it in the K-Wave News Zoom room and head in with